The sudden suspension of all 6,000-man Ajax military trucks in service with the British Army has triggered intense debate about the real condition of the United Kingdom's ground forces and raised questions about whether this situation could indirectly threaten Ukrainian logistics, given that the same family of trucks has been supplied to the armed forces of Ukraine. The grounding of such a massive logistics fleet, especially so soon after the temporary suspension of the Ajax armored vehicle program, paints an unsettling picture of systemic issues within the British Army rather than a flaw with the vehicles themselves. To understand whether this poses any risk for Ukraine, it is necessary to separate the technical facts from political and organizational context. The root of the suspension lies in concerns over bolts connected to the vehicle's driveline assembly, specifically the area around the prop shaft. According to reporting from The Telegraph, some of these bolts were found to be compromised, raising the risk of driveline failure and potential loss of vehicle control. Britain's Ministry of Defence responded by ordering an immediate inspection of every manned truck in the fleet, effectively grounding all 6,000 vehicles until checks are complete. On the surface, this may sound like a widespread technical defect, but the deeper analysis suggests a more mundane and localized cause: nearly 2 decades of inconsistent maintenance practices. The MAN Ajax series, formerly produced by RMMV, Rheinmetall MAN military vehicles, entered British service in 2007. Since then, the vehicles have accumulated substantial mileage across training cycles, deployments, and support missions. Numerous defense analysts, as well as outlets commenting on the issue, emphasize that the problem appears to stem from long-term wear and insufficient servicing rather than any fundamental issue with the design or manufacturing. These are trucks that have proven reliable in dozens of militaries around the world, continue to receive new export contracts, and are widely regarded as one of the most dependable logistics platforms in NATO. Their strong track record makes it far more plausible that the British Army's current troubles reflect their own maintenance backlog rather than a systemic design flaw. Another important nuance is the nature of the suspension itself. The British Army is operating under peacetime safety standards, where even minor technical concerns lead to preventive grounding of equipment. This standard is dramatically different from wartime conditions, under which militaries routinely accept certain risks and often adapt maintenance protocols to operational urgency. In the British case, the grounding is a precautionary step aimed at minimizing liability and ensuring full compliance with regulations. Such actions, while frustrating for the armed forces, are not unusual for a country that is not actively engaged in high-intensity combat operations. For Ukraine, however, the context is completely different, and such restrictions would not apply in the same rigid form. For this reason, there is currently no evidence or reason to believe that Ukraine faces a comparable threat to its RMMV Ajax vehicles. The trucks delivered to the armed forces of Ukraine as part of Western military aid have undergone proper servicing and inspections prior to transfer, and Ukrainian experience with them has been overwhelmingly positive. Ukrainian logistics units consistently describe the Ajax family as powerful, dependable, and highly adaptable to the demanding conditions of frontline supply operations. If anything, the NATO standard maintenance these trucks received before being sent to Ukraine places them in a better condition than many aging British units that have accumulated heavy use since 2007. That said, Britain's decision to halt operations of its entire fleet does have real consequences, particularly for British military readiness. The logistics backbone of any modern army depends on its trucks, fuel carriers, recovery vehicles, and heavy haulers. With 6,000 man trucks temporarily unavailable, the British Army faces a short-term reduction in mobility, resupply capacity, and overall operational flexibility. Even if the individual inspections are quick, the scale of the fleet means the process will take time, creating a logistical bottleneck at an already sensitive moment for British defence policy. The timing is indeed the most troubling aspect. The suspension of the manned trucks follows just days after Britain halted the use of its Ajax tracked reconnaissance vehicles due to renewed concerns over vibration and excessive noise, issues that were supposedly resolved after years of delays and cost overruns. Having two major vehicle families simultaneously suspended calls into question the structural health of British procurement, maintenance, and quality control. This is not a small setback, it is a symptom of long-term underfunding and political indecision regarding defence modernisation. For years, the United Kingdom has been criticised for neglecting its ground forces. Repeated budget cuts, delayed modernisation programs, and procurement controversies have weakened the Army's equipment base. Even now, promises to increase defence spending or accelerate key projects, such as the RCH-155 self-propelled artillery system, are frequently postponed. The back-to-back grounding of critical vehicles exposes the cumulative effects of this neglect. It is not the trucks or Ajax that are failing, it is the system responsible for maintaining and renewing them. From Ukraine's perspective, the British issues do not translate into immediate risks. The MAN HX fleet delivered to Ukraine is not dependent on British maintenance cycles, and the identified problems appear tied to specific British service conditions rather than an inherent fault. Moreover, HX trucks enjoyed strong reputations long before the British concern surfaced and continue to secure new international orders, such as recent deliveries to Denmark. If a universal technical flaw existed, operators across NATO and Europe would have reported similar problems long ago. However, the British situation does carry indirect implications for Ukraine. A weakened or logistically constrained British Army could limit the speed or scale of future UK defence assistance. While this does not affect equipment already delivered to Ukraine, it may influence Britain's ability to support long-term programs, supply chains, spare parts production, and future transfers. In the broader geopolitical context, Britain's reliability as a leading supporter of Ukraine depends strongly on its own military readiness and political decisiveness. The temporary suspension of the MAN truck fleet is therefore not a direct threat to Ukraine's armed forces but rather a warning sign about the fragility of one of Kiev's key partners. The trucks themselves remain reliable, and the issue appears rooted in aging British platforms and maintenance gaps. For Ukraine, the takeaway is clear: the equipment it has received remains safe and dependable, but the strategic health of partner militaries must be monitored closely. Britain's difficulties highlight the broader challenge facing Western armies as they simultaneously support Ukraine and attempt to rebuild their own capabilities after decades of underinvestment. In summary, the grounding of 6,000 MAN HX trucks presents no immediate technical risk for Ukrainian forces, yet it underscores systemic weaknesses in British defence readiness. For analysts and military planners, the story is less about a bolt in a driveline and more about how political inertia and underfunding can undermine an army's operational capacity. It is a reminder that even modern, well-equipped militaries can face readiness crises if maintenance, investment, and oversight are allowed to erode over time. For Ukraine and its supporters, this situation should be seen as a call for sustained commitment, not only in aid, but in strengthening the defense foundations of all nations involved in supporting Kiev's fight.